All right, so get this. We're diving into the world of subtitling today. You sent over some really interesting stuff from RoleCatcher. It sounds like the platform for anyone even thinking about a career in this field. And honestly, before we even got started, I was picturing like someone in a dark room, hunched over a keyboard, just racing to keep up with the dialogue. But it turns out it's so much more than that.
It really is.
Yeah.
What I find fascinating is how subtitling kind of sits at this intersection of language and technology and culture. On the surface, it seems so simple. You're just providing text for audio,
Yeah.
right? But then you start thinking about things like cultural nuances, humor, slang, and suddenly you realize those invisible storytellers, as RoleCatcher calls them, they have a lot of power.
Yeah.
They can make or break how well a film or TV show translates to a global audience.
Yeah, and speaking of global audiences, the role catcher guides really emphasize how that whole streaming explosion has really changed the game. They say the demand for subtitling is booming, which on one hand, great news if you're considering this as a career path. More opportunity, right? But I'm also wondering, does that increased demand change the work itself? Like, are the deadlines crazier? Are subtitlers under more pressure to churn out content quickly?
That's a really good point. It's almost like the difference between crafting a fine meal and running a fast food restaurant. You know what I mean? The demand for speed and efficiency in this streaming age is definitely something that comes up in the role catcher guides. They highlight the importance of things like time management and technology skills. So it suggests that subtitlers need to be as comfortable with the tools as they are with the nuances of language.
Okay, so maybe not quite the image of someone lounging on their couch in their PJs leisurely translating dialogue, though I have to admit that part of me was clinging to that fantasy for a hot minute. But it makes sense, right? The faster the world consumes content, the faster someone has to create those subtitles. Speaking of realities versus fantasies, the role catcher materials don't shy away from the less glamorous aspects of the job either, do they?
Not at all.
Hmm.
In fact, they're very upfront about some of the downsides. Things like irregular work hours, the potential for repetitive projects, even the challenge of finding a good work-life balance when you're essentially working from wherever, whenever. It's a good reminder that even jobs that sound amazing on paper have their share of challenges.
Totally. It's like that classic grass is always greener situation until
Yeah.
you're actually the one mowing the lawn, right? But I also think there's something to be said for knowing what you're getting into. And that's where having resources like RoleCatcher can be so valuable. It's not just about selling you on a career path. It's about giving you a realistic preview so you can decide if it's truly the right fit.
Exactly. And if we're talking about getting a realistic preview, one thing that the role catcher guides really drilled down on was the specific skill set required to be a successful subtitler. And honestly, I think some people might be surprised by what they emphasize.
Oh, absolutely. It's about way more than just being bilingual. So let's unpack this. What are those must-have skills according to RoleCatcher?
Well, obviously strong language skills are kind of a given, right? But what I thought was really interesting is how much role catcher stresses active listening as being just as important. Think about it. You're not just translating words on a page, you're absorbing tone intention, even cultural context. Like a raised eyebrow can completely change the meaning of a sentence.
It's like they're these master code switchers,
Yeah.
except instead of dialects, they're switching between entire cultural contexts,
Oh.
all while making sure those subtitles fit neatly within those little boxes on the screen.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of fitting things neatly, RoleCatcher also highlighted the technical side of things, like knowing specific software, understanding formatting guidelines, being able to work efficiently with different file types. It's a good reminder that even creative fields have their technical demands.
Totally. It makes you realize there's this whole other layer to subtitling that we as viewers never even think about.
Yeah.
Like we see the finished product and assume it just magically appeared there. But in reality, there's all this behind the scenes work, all this technical know-how that goes into making those subtitles seamless and unobtrusive.
Absolutely. And that actually brings us to what might be the most disruptive force in the world of subtitling today, artificial intelligence.
Ah, yes, the AI elephant in the room, or should we say the algorithm in the software?
Right. RoleCatcher spends a good chunk of time discussing how AI is changing the game, from automating tasks like transcription and translation to even analyzing job applications. And while some might see this as a threat, RoleCatcher seems to be positioning AI more as a tool.
Which makes sense. I mean, AI can probably handle the more technical aspects of subtitling, like transcribing dialogue or even translating straightforward sentences. But when it comes to those nuanced cultural references, the humor, the slang, that's where human expertise is still irreplaceable.
Exactly. And that's a theme that kind of emerges throughout all the RoleCatcher materials. This idea that AI can augment and enhance the work that human subtitlers do, but it can't replace that human element entirely. It's about finding the right balance between leveraging technology and preserving the art of subtitling.
So if AI is becoming this increasingly prevalent tool, I'm curious what that means for aspiring subtitlers. How do you stand out in a field that's becoming more automated?
That's where things get really interesting. And RoleCatcher actually provides some really intriguing insights.
Hmm.
They emphasize the importance of showcasing those skills that AI can't replicate, at least not yet.
So it's like, how do you stand out to a computer program and a hiring manager at the same time? That feels like a whole new level of job hunting anxiety.
It is a challenge, definitely.
Yeah.
But RoleCatcher really emphasizes something that I think is really crucial. It's not just about listing every language you've ever dabbled in on your resume. It's about showcasing your expertise in specific language pairs, highlighting the cultural contexts you understand best. It's about demonstrating that you're not just a translation machine. You're someone who can bring a deep understanding of nuance and subtext to the table.
So instead of saying, like, I speak fluent Spanish, it's more like, I'm an expert in subtitling Latin American cinema, and I can nail those rapid-fire jokes in Narcos without breaking a sweat.
Exactly. It's about showcasing that passion, that specialized knowledge, that ability to connect with a specific audience on a cultural level. Because that's something AI, at least for now, can't quite replicate.
And that's what makes a subtitler truly great, right? It's
Yeah.
not just about linguistic accuracy. It's about capturing the heart and soul of a story, the humor, the drama, the cultural nuances, and making sure that translates for a whole new audience. It's like they're cultural ambassadors building these bridges between languages and perspectives.
It really is a fascinating field. And honestly, as we consume more and more global content, the role of the subtitler is only going to become more vital. They are the ones making sure that these stories transcend borders and connect with viewers on a human level.
Makes you appreciate those rolling credits in a whole new light, right? We might
Yeah.
not always see the subtitlers themselves, but their work is what allows us to experience those stories, those emotions, those connections in a way that we couldn't otherwise.
Absolutely. So next time you find yourself totally captivated by a subtitled film or TV show, take a moment to appreciate the skill, the artistry, the cultural understanding that went into creating those seemingly simple lines of text.
Beautifully said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the intricate and surprisingly complex world of subtitling. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep an eye out for those invisible storytellers who are quietly shaping how we experience the world one subtitle at a time.